Hey y'all, how we doing? Shout out to Bear Nation for tuning in for another episode of the Bear Necessities of Entrepreneurship, a podcast for the entrepreneur-minded, created by entrepreneurs, discussing the real stories that give you the tools to overcome challenges and stay true to your real self. As always, I want to give a shout out to our partners over at Finn. Finn is a social good platform that creates employee engagement and builds culture. We've teamed up with Finn to give back to the communities that we serve. For every episode, we will be donating $10 to the cause of choosing by our guest in the Finn platform. Enjoy today's episode. What up, Bear Nation? We are back again for another episode of the Bear Necessities of Entrepreneurship podcast. And I am honored to bring a very special guest today, John Lynn. And John and I go back a little bit. I'll tell you that story in a minute. But to give you some context on who John is the co-founder of Cela Innovation. John is a globally recognized expert and industry leader in startup accelerators. He has spoken on the topic at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, as well as in multiple locations within China, throughout Japan, Haiti, Aruba, the United States, all over the place. And his work has been published in Forbes, TechCrunch, and also featured in the NASDAQ. And John is one of the OGs that I met when I moved to New York. In fact, I had heard about John a lot. And people kept saying, have you met John Lynn yet? I'm like, no, I haven't. I'm supposed to be getting an intro. And this was going on for like weeks. And John and I happened to be serendipitously at the same event as a mentor for an Inigit coaching kind of startups accelerator event. And I was sitting next to him and I was like, you're John Lynn. And he was like, do I know you? And I was like, no, but I've heard a lot about you. And I've heard about you from Phil and Francis and all these people. Nice to finally meet you. So that is how I met John in New York City after hearing a lot about him. So I'm excited to have John on. John, say hi to the guest for me.
Hey, Bear Nation. That's you guys are. That's the name.
Yep.
Happy to be here. Thank you to Rob for inviting me. Like you said, we have known each other for a long time now and worked on a lot together in the innovation ecosystem here in New York and beyond. So really glad that we get a chance to talk about it today.
Absolutely. And yeah, so John and I have worked on a couple of different things, which we'll get into in the pod. So, you know, as I introduced John, I introduced him as a co-founder of Cela Innovation. So we're going to have him talk about that. He's got an amazing entrepreneurial journey. And for those that continually listen to the Bear Necessities podcast, you know that we love non-linear career paths. So John, I would love to start, before we get into the Cela side of it, let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey. You're the co-founder, you've been building this business, but this entrepreneurial mindset, this entrepreneurial journey started way back when, some other businesses, some other things. So why don't you take it from the beginning of how you got into entrepreneurship and in this world that you are a rock star in?
Thanks. Yeah, it is not a linear path. So glad that there is foundation for that in the Bear Nation audience and something we go for on the podcast. So I'll get to that in a second. But to start off, yeah, Cela, we are building accelerators and community around accelerators, but it is the second or third iteration of this effort, and it's my fourth, fifth, or sixth company overall. So just to preface the true non-linearity of how this has gone, that's how we're starting off. So my entrepreneurial journey really began in 2008 when I graduated college. And I was a literature major. I had always been creative. I had really gotten into law and public speaking in college and was aspiring to be something creative, whether that's a writer or something else. The economy was not one that was going to enable or support that kind of creativity. Mm-hmm. So I got my first jobs out of school pretty much where I picked up off after high school, and I was teaching tennis and delivering food. And over the course of that time, I had a lot of room to think about what I could do and try and preserve my belief in where I wanted to go. And so I ended up getting involved with one of the presidential campaigns where I was trained on community organizing principles, political organizing principles, how to bring people together to create impact, collaboration, and opportunity in a meaningful way that was also systematic. And that experience just spoke to me. The world made sense in a really new way after I got those teachings, and I took them with me. So I went to travel abroad. I lived in Japan for a little while and built community there, my job in Nagasaki. Came back, worked again a little bit on the political end, got into PR, then got into financial sales, and ultimately took my first steps as a professional. But this is all over the course of my first 5 years or so in my career. And when I took a step back as a broker at a financial firm in Midtown, having built $1 million portfolio and led a small team as a 25-year-old, realized, A, I was in a very different place than I thought I would be. B, that I was a very different professional than I thought I would be and had different value than I thought I had. And C, that I did not like where I was.
So,
yeah.
I want to pause there because you made a really good point, right? You spent 5 years and doing political campaigns and PR, and in the middle there, moving to Japan. You know, what was the impetus or the drive to go out to Japan, and what was your fascination with wanting to move there?
Yeah. So I had grown up in New Jersey. My best friend was half Japanese, so I'd always had a good contact with the culture and felt like I had something to explore there. So I actually just went there for a week-long vacation, but got in touch with a hostel, the ownership of a hostel I was staying at, and reconnected. And they said, if you want to work with us, we will put a roof over your head. We'll pay you a little bit every day. You'll clean the toilets and the bathrooms and change the beds, kill the bed bugs. But if you're willing to do it all, you can stay and explore. And so I took them up on that offer.
That is amazing, because that is something that people talk all the time. I admit myself, when I was young, I talked about how I wanted to travel and I was doing things, and I never did. And I didn't take advantage of studying abroad, anything. And it wasn't until I met, my now wife, when we started dating, I was like, hey, I'm moving to Europe after I graduate. I'm gonna get a master's. Like, I don't do long distance. You want to come? And I was like, hell yeah, let's go. And that was life-changing, because I too was at a place where I didn't necessarily not like where I was, but I felt like I was missing something. I felt like when I sat back and took a look at when she asked me, I was like, man, I have all these things around me that I love, and communities and friendships and people and playing football and a good job. But there's something missing, and I needed to go explore that. And so it was that jump. And I think for you, just hearing that and having the listeners out there hear that story, it's amazing that you had an attraction to this culture and you just said, let's go explore it. And then you loved it so much, you took the initiative to do the hard things, jobs no one really wants to do, just to be there. What was that experience like? I mean, what did that experience teach you that led you, as you looked at where you were, $1 million portfolio, your value, there's something there that had to have pushed that barrier of getting you to the next step.
Right. And I'm really impressed that you see that, because for most people it's an interesting story. But what the reality is that experience set the foundation for a lot of the opportunity that I got in the future, as well as gave me some of the self-discovery and skills that I needed to know what I was capable of uniquely as an entrepreneur. And I didn't realize that at the time. It's only now, 13 years later, that I can tell you that. But those are the two things that it's been important for. So happy to talk about those things.
Yeah.
And the reason that it was important was, A, because I was able to get an opportunity and take it, to go with it intuitively without much of a plan. And that is the constant process of being an entrepreneur. You are never going to get the opportunities that you are looking for until you are at a much later stage than you're starting. And so you're constantly in the position of getting a chance to do something that might be 1% to 10% what you actually want to be doing. But that is a step forward and that does have core characteristics for the work and the mission that you are about. So
I love that.
This was one of the first moments that I really, I think, had a sense of that and wanted to see what was behind that door, because up until then I really walked a pretty straight path trying to be a traditional.
Yeah. Well, and something that you point out there, you made a great point, right? For entrepreneurs is that you're never going to get the perfect chance to build everything perfect and it be perfect. It's when you feel that intuition, you feel that your gut telling you to go take a chance, to take a leap, you need to chase that opportunity, right? Chase opportunity and let that build upon each other. Sometimes that one opportunity is not the end goal, but it's that lesson that takes that next step and opens that next door. So I love that. Go with your intuition. Like you said that, I went with my intuition. And so many times society, culture tells us step 1, step 2, step 3, and we forget to listen to our gut and our intuition and guiding principle of life that says this is an opportunity that you need to go take. Whether it's going to work or not, you don't know, but you gotta go do it. And I love that message, like that. You saying that just like gave me chills, because that is something that we like suppress our intuition. I think sometimes
it's key. And even today, a lot of the day-to-day challenges in building this business are about, on the one hand, sourcing opportunity, but on the other hand, shaping it to be just a little bit more what we need it to be. And as time goes on, everything looks a little bit more ready for us by the time we get to it.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's available at any point in life, and that I'm glad we're picking up on here.
Yeah.
The second thing that experience was really important for was identifying my ability to organize and to bring together. So a lot of people, when they visit Japan, go to Nagasaki for one day to see the bomb museum and to see the impact site. By the time I was sort of done there, people were staying 2 or 3 days, because I had been able to create a kind of roadmap to really understand and experience the place that people resonated with, and to get them together to do it together.
Yeah.
And so the hostel was seeing people stay longer and longer. And I was like, all right, I think if I wanted to stay, that's something they could probably pay me for.
Yeah.
And so that was something that, combined with my next step in my career, where we left off was, I really wanted to take a step back from this work doing financial sales. I ended up applying to business school, but ultimately at that time got into my first Accelerator in Boston. And so this was a program that was for people that were at the very starting point of their entry into the Boston startup community. And it had been built by the Techstars Boston management team. So it had close ties to the investor networks, mentor networks of Techstars in Boston. It was the first time that this program was running, but I had that sense again. There's something here that, it's going to be a step back in a lot of ways, but I have a feeling that there's something here. So moved to Boston, did that program, and achieved in the 8 weeks of that program what I had not been able to do in the 5 years preceding, and that I had not been able to do in my 4 years of university. And that was not to get the content and the resources I need. The technology, the time, the knowledge had always been available in some way. What was not available was access to people that were operating in that space and that could really add to my progress. And even coming out of a top tier university where we always hear the alumni network is so important, networking is so important. This program really, and then any accelerator program I later learned, really puts you in it, gives you the network, gives you the community that you need. And so in those 8 weeks, I got my first mentor, but then I got my first co-founder. And then I got my first advisor. And then my first advisor became my first customer. And then we were able to apply to a true accelerator and get a offer for investment from that group. And all in the matter of a span of time that really had never been, relevant before.
Yeah.
How could you see all that happening so quickly when on every other time scale we're looking at years of development? So the important connection between Nagasaki and that experience in Boston was that I was again in a situation where I had place, I had time, I had access, and was able to take the relationships that were given to me and bring them together in a way that moved me and those around me forward. And so that company did not work out. I ended up experimenting with business school and trying to build a company there shortly, but neither I nor business school thought that was a good idea after one semester. So closed the company and then got an opportunity in the beginning of 2014 to come help relaunch the Techstars New York program as an associate. And so I moved back down to New York, started working at Techstars, and entered the staff side of, at that time, one of the top accelerators in the world.
So I love this. And this, again, this journey is so unique. And there's another piece that you brought out. I know that this piece I circled because I know it's about what cela is all about too, is we talk a lot about the power of networks. We all know we need to network, right? But that word you use, not everyone has access. And how do we create access to community? How do we create access to networks? And it's not just knowledge, right? You said not knowledge, access. Knowledge can be learned. We can consume it in so many different ways. Knowledge only gets you so far, right? And in an earlier episode, Larry Long Jr. talks about it's not about what you know. It's not about who you know. It's about who knows you, right? And in order to get access, you need to have those people in your network to know who you are, to trust you with access to those networks, right? It's a two-way street. Yeah. And that's something that I want to we're going to talk about a little bit later. But for those that are listening, and if you start seeing these threads through John's story, as he's building community, he's built community so far in political spheres. He's built community in another country at a hostel, which led to more opportunity. He built community and a job in PR. He built community and a sales book of business, doing $1 million book, and built community in Boston through this Accelerator program, and now about to build community in New York. And as he's building this community, the idea here that he's mentioned in each place is access to the knowledge, the people, the places, the things, the opportunities for you to learn more, do more, be more, experience more, create more. And I love this thread that's being pulled through because I know it leads to cela. So, we're in New York, Techstars. You're building one of the most famous accelerators around. You're building it in New York. You're building that community. So when did this idea from building communities for others turn into taking that step back after one failed entrepreneurship journey and saying, you know what, I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to do it better this time? When did that transition start happening from Techstars to cela?
Yeah. When I started at Techstars, I really never envisioned becoming an entrepreneur again. And that wasn't because Techstars was an investment group and I wanted to be a VC for the rest of my career. It was because I felt like my place was on the staff of an accelerator helping entrepreneurs. And so for a few years, that's exactly what I did do. And then, at a high level, across the accelerator industry between 2014 and 2016, it was one of the really explosive periods in the adoption of the accelerator. So it's where you see the number of accelerators worldwide go from 3 to 5 in 2006, 2007, up to 8 and 9 in 2012, up to 200 in 2013, and then suddenly up to 2,500 by the end of 2015.
That's amazing.
And so by 2016 in New York, there were dozens of programs serving different kinds of entrepreneurs, for different outcomes in different ways. And while in some sense they were all competing with each other, in another sense, they were all challenged by the same things. And so at the end of 2015, while I was working at a boot camp, started getting these programs together. There were other people running accelerators that were kind of thinking about this as well. But I had that kind of intuitive impulse of this. There's no reason this shouldn't happen right now, and that it can't happen tomorrow night. And I can't make these calls and get these people together right away. So in December 2015, we had our first accelerator gathering of New York City accelerators, and it was one of the most, I think, formative moments of my career, because I was surrounded by people that had done a lot more than me. And I hadn't even really done enough to respect myself at that point. But I was in a position to make that gathering successful.
Yeah.
And was able to step up to that. And so I did it again the next week, and again the week after, and before I knew it, we'd done it a couple months in a row. And at the same time, my boss at the boot camp I was working was beginning to think about his next steps. I was beginning to think about, how can we build community as a company between accelerators, and also how can we expand the adoption of the accelerator model outside of just the tech community? Because like you said, Rob, it's about access. So if that's the case, then why does it only need to be access between startups and mentors and investors? Why can't it be access between new political candidates and funders, new artists and patrons, anything? And that was really where I saw the emergence of a new direction for the model that I was very passionate about. And so my boss and I at that time started a new company that was going to do that. And we got into some conversations. Verizon got it immediately. We got the director of innovation there. They said, we've got a program coming up. We want you to build it. We had a contract in 4 weeks. We were delivering a 5-month full-scale accelerator program inside of one of the country's biggest corporations within 6 weeks, and successfully ran that program by the end of 2016. At that point, I decided to formalize the Association of Accelerators in New York City into a nonprofit association, and was looking to go further into market with other corporates building accelerators. 2017 did not agree. Both of those companies failed the next year. I was removed as the chairman of the nonprofit by the end of 2017. And my boss and I split as co-founders at the end of that year as well. So by 2018, I'm happy to talk about those moments more. But by the beginning of 2018 was in a moment where, I've either been kind of rejected by the industry and my vision has been kind of a failure, to I'm going to try to do this even further my way by myself again. And had to do that. So that's when we set up the first Global Accelerator Summit. That turned into the Cela Summit in 2019. We reincorporated into Cela in April 2nd, 2019. We were funded by a small venture group in February 2020, and are now supported by sponsorship and customers that are paying us to be a part of our events, to be a part of our association, or to work with us on creating an accelerator program. Yes, with some of the largest companies in the world, but also governments, universities, and industry.
So that's one kind of an amazing series of events, both the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, building something that you saw a need and felt so passionate about building, to having those moments where you had to step away. And, you were forced with this decision of, am I done? Is this over, or do I go on and take the next step and do it myself? And when you were listening, when you were thinking about where you were at the end of, that period as we started 2018, what was that? What drew you to say there's still something here, and I need to give it another shot?
Yeah, it's a much less noble and interesting answer than any of the previous inspirations I've had. It was pure pain, and kind of anger and disappointment in those that I'd worked with on this initiative just prior. Mm-hmm. And I believe that I had been put into the position that I was in because my vision was not necessarily the one that they all believed in. And I wanted to prove that it was, mm-hmm. and that I could do it. Mm-hmm. Because remember, like when we started this activity, I was the least proven person in that room the first time we did it. Mm-hmm. That never changed. Mm-hmm. What changed was my ability to manage those relationships around. Mm-hmm. And at a certain point, they weren't down to have that person be the organizer. So no, go ahead and finish your thought there. Sorry. Yeah. So I felt like I was ready and that this vision was correct. And I was motivated to prove that. So I love that. And, when you look at being an entrepreneur and you look at, your story, right? 2 different ventures that didn't quite turn out the way you wanted to, that pain, that anger, that disappointment, but also that vision leads you to, you knew there was, not only that was your own pain, but you knew there was still pain in the market. You noticed that there's still major challenges that have happened and that accelerators are facing. And you knew that there was still something that could be done here. You had a vision that you wanted to see through. And sometimes this entrepreneurial journey we go on, and I talk about this a lot in hiring as an early entrepreneur. You hire sometimes the wrong people. You bring on the wrong people. And maybe long-term wasn't the right person, but at that time you brought the right person. You partner with the right people for the right reasons. You learned a lesson, and it maybe not worked out, but again, it's those steps and it's those experiences that led to where we are today. And so to have that motivation, and the imposter syndrome is real, right? The least proven person, but at the same point, you're the guy that got everybody to the table. And that is in itself an amazing thing, being known as the person that people could connect with, build around, be a part of this community. So I love that that's kind of the inspiration and the motivation to really drive to that cela summit. It is. And I want to just call out something really important that you're saying there as well and it's in the relationship piece. And especially as entrepreneurs, it's really closer to being a creative than it is a high-powered executive or business person. And when we get into these relationships, they are creative relationships. Mm-hmm. And we can feel dependent on them, and we can feel like we need to keep them ambiguous so that there is freedom creatively for our ideas to go where they need to go and for us to prove ourselves to each other in the process. But that is really the number one thing that leads to founder fallout, which is the reason 75% or more of startups fail. And so because of that, having a defined relationship that is about what's good for the company and expectations around that relationship for whether that it continues to be what the company needs or continues to be the output that is good for it. Yeah, it is something that needs to be in place before the relationship. You need to know that you're looking for a marketer or a salesperson mm-hmm. or a designer and what that contribution is going to look like before you decide to start a company with your best friend. Are they that designer? Yeah. And then you need to be ready to say, here's how far down the line we can look at this relationship, 2-3 years. Here's what we want you to be accountable for in that time. And here's how we're going to check on that and reorient and renegotiate this relationship if necessary between now and then. Yep. And then you got to maintain that. So those are the things that I think often get overlooked in the founder relationship that it's never too early for. And it's a difficult discussion to have, especially when you feel like there aren't a lot of other people that are willing to work with you, that have the skills that you feel like you need to move forward.
Yep.
But giving yourself, empowering yourself with the authority to say, this is the kind of person I need, and this is the structure that they are going to contribute with, is crucial.
It is. And for those out there, and as you know, I run two businesses. I'm a co-founder of a company called Haptic Group, where I do have a business partner. And one of the things that have led to Haptic Group's success with Phil and I is from the very beginning, we defined, because we were friends and friends at first. And we had to sit down and define that business relationship. Who owned what? Who had final say in what? On what aspects of the business, that there was that accountability to each other, which, you just made that great point about defining that relationship and holding each other accountable, and know that there's times when it's going to have to be reoriented or renegotiated. And that is, I think, such a crucial piece that no one talks about and no one tells founders. They go into these ambiguous relationships and they don't hold each other accountable to what needs to get done. I think that is a huge lesson here that just isn't said enough and not talked about enough. So I love that point. I'm glad you took a second to really define that piece.
Yeah. And I think it's something that is also under messaged in the idea of what a corporation is. Mm-hmm. The whole social construct of a corporation is to house a collaboration between individuals, so that mm-hmm. collaboration has an interest of its own that people are committed to delivering to, regardless of their self-interest. Mm-hmm. And whether it's a for-profit or a nonprofit or a B Corp or something else, takes precedence over those individual interests. Mm-hmm. It's not a contract between people. We are agreeing that this thing between us is going to be more important than what either of us want. Mm-hmm. I think when that foundation is clear, people can understand what they're committing to when building a business, when building a corporation.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also know when those relationships need to take that step back. Sometimes, Phil and I are friends. There's times we have business conversations, hard business conversations. You got to kind of step out of friend mode and put on your business mode, because our self-interest needs to be pulled away, because it's not about our friendship. It's about the business decision at hand and that goal that we set out. So I 100% agree to that. And I think that's such an awesome point. So I want to kind of explain a little bit and have you share what is Cela, and what is, we're sitting here in the middle of 2021. You and I are talking pre-show about some cool things you have going on as we head into 2020, the back half of 2021, 2022, world's opening up, the global borders are coming back to really connect. So tell us a little bit about what Cela is about and what you're doing, creating this community.
Sure. So Cela is two things. Cela is a service, and Cela is a community. We are a community of accelerator professionals from all over the world. Asia, Europe, LATAM, Caribbean, United States, everywhere, Australia, mm-hmm. even parts of Africa, that come together to help define the space together. Mm-hmm. And we do that in three ways, with the industry's only global summit, called the Cela Summit, that's happening in October at the NASDAQ. We also do it monthly, where we bring these accelerators together online. Mm-hmm. And then we also separately bring them together and match them with underserved founders. So that's our community. And it's made up of about 500 individuals that work at accelerators in many different parts of the world. Now, on the service side, we are brought in to help build an accelerator, whatever that means. It can mean, A, that you are thinking about building an accelerator and don't know where to start, and you need input to understand what the process of starting one looks like, how to make the commercial case and the business model for an accelerator, and how to establish operations and make a plan that people can buy into and believe. Mm-hmm. You can do that level of advising. It can be stepping in to cover certain parts mm-hmm. of the building of an accelerator. Maybe we're helping develop a mentor network. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're building the curriculum. Maybe we're sourcing the startups. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're recruiting or training the team. Maybe we're helping with marketing and PR. All these things are individual components of acceleration that cela helps deliver. And then at the broadest level, we will do all three. We will design the thing, we will develop and operate the thing, and we will manage it and own it and be accountable for it. And so that's what we did with Verizon in 2016, something we continue to do. And those are the levels of service that.
Yeah. I love, and for those that, out there, when we talk about accelerators, there's accelerators at different levels. There's accelerators for the entrepreneurs, right? And the startup accelerators. Then there's accelerators, as John was saying, for innovation department, like at Verizon, right? Within big corporates and creating that level of acceleration and innovation in-house. There's the government side of things. And I've seen John do this on different levels. In fact, John was an advisor to the Hap Day boot camps. We ran a series of global boot camps where John was in helping with the recruitment and helping validate the right people into the organization, helping with overseeing curriculum build, and helping with, advising us on just how to go about building a great program. And so I've seen John at work at different levels, and it's amazing when you start thinking about this idea of what John is building, and you see it at these different levels, to understand that acceleration happens at so many different levels. And I think that's really cool to see what you're doing. And I love, and also, John has monthly Celegate events that I go to, which is super awesome. I'm excited for October for the Celegate. So I love this. I mean, when we think about where it's going, the world is, as this collaboration has happened more cross-border. When we look at all the, we've talked about it, Africa, China, Australia, Japan, Europe, all these different areas that you've brought together and creating this global, there's still so much to be done to tie those threads together and provide access, to provide opportunity, to provide connection. As you said, underserved founders, which I've gone to a few of those and been a mentor in those, which is absolutely amazing. In fact, 2 companies that I'm advising today, I met through cela office hours, where I came in and mentored and got to know and create a relationship. So there's so many amazing things that happen out of this network and this community that you've created. And I love to see it. I just I had to share that because, I've intimately seen and been involved and been affected by it in multiple ways. So as we kind of come up towards the end of the time here and we have some questions I like to ask everyone that joins the pod, where do you see, we just went through this global pandemic. We're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. We have, entrepreneurs around the world trying to figure out how to continue building. What do you see is going to happen with the entrepreneurship space and accelerator space post-pandemic? And how has the accelerator community had to adapt to still provide that access and service and opportunity? What do you see as some trends or potential trends coming out of this? And I know this is part of what we're looking for at Celegate, but kind of, what the future holds in this space.
Yeah. So, at high level, the prognosis for entrepreneurship in the U.S. from a data point of view is not good. There are fewer companies being incorporated today than in the past 30 years of the country. And the majority of young people have a poor opinion of capitalism. Mm-hmm. Not that all business is orthodox capitalism, or that's even on the mind of many people that are doing startups or that are doing business, but there is that assumption. Mm-hmm. And so with that cultural belief being clear in the research, and with incorporations down across the country, there's one part of your answer. The other part of your answer is that it's becoming more important than ever. Mm-hmm. Part of the tensions that we see emerging in different communities and regions around the country and around the world are because it has become so unpredictable. Mm-hmm. and so difficult to understand how to build stability into our plans. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurship, like we've said, is about It's about responding. It's about doing what you can right now. Mm-hmm. And so as the world becomes more unpredictable, those entrepreneurial talents become more crucial for everybody. Mm-hmm. And so this is where I think accelerators become more important and where they are becoming more adopted even than ever before coming out of the pandemic. We are seeing accelerators, requests for proposal from and all over the country, from all kinds of organizations, whether they are governments, universities, corporations, communities. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful and excited for our space to be part of how everyone comes together in this next stage.
I love that. And what's even more amazing is that you said entrepreneurship is down, but in a time where it's easier than ever to start a business, to be an entrepreneur. And so I think that those are some, conversations that need to be had. And I'm excited that Cela is leading those conversations. And it's conversations you and I have had. I've heard you speak about with other people and engaged in. So I think that that's a really important piece for entrepreneurs, is that now is the time. Now is the best time because there is opportunity. There are more people out there talking about what it means to accelerate business and help drive great ideas and great products and great service. And that is a huge thing for us to understand and that. So I always like to ask a few questions to kind of close us out and kind of to share some things. So the first question that I always love to ask is, what advice would you give Gen Z, millennial entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurial-minded folks out there right now that are listening saying, I want one piece of advice from John? What would that be?
You are ready right now. If you have people telling you that you should wait, or telling you that you're not good enough, or telling you need another degree, you should be talking to somebody else. Find the people that are going to support you with what you want to do right now. You do not need to wait to do what you want to do. Your supporters are out there. They are out there right now. And all you need to do is the hard work of finding them and knowing how to work with them. Mm-hmm. And secondary to that, letting go of those that are not there for you. If I could sort of step back in time and change anything, that would be it. I would spend less time wondering whether I deserved to be doing what I wanted to do or was ready, and I would spend more time looking for the people that were looking to work with.
Yeah. That one hits in the feels for me because I felt the same way for a long time. And it wasn't until, I had a pivotal moment in my life where I did get fired that I was like, you know what? I am ready. I've been ready. I was ready a long time ago. And I knew I should have been enough. Should have been enough for me. And surrounding yourself with people. So I love that ready right now. That's such a great piece. So what is your superpower, John?
So I have a couple of interesting names for it. I'm not really sure if there's scientific context for them, but I call my perspective Neverland thinking. And it means I believe in what the person across the table from me is thinking and hoping for and wanting to work on. I believe they can do it. I believe I can help them. And whether that's making an introduction, meeting with them again, doing something else, I will always prioritize finding a way to help and support that person in doing the thing they want to be doing, rather than thinking about whether it's a smart thing to do or whether they'll be able to. And it's certainly something that it does not provide much of a return to our business. Mm-hmm. And that has probably slowed things down a few years. But that is something that energizes me to be in this space of entrepreneurship every day. Mm-hmm.
And I love that, I believe that I can help. Again, kind of coming back to access, right? Where can I help somebody get access to that will help take their vision one step further? Yeah. I love that. And I do like the Neverland thinking. I think you should coin that and create that because I love that. What is one book, resource, show, piece of content you think entrepreneurial-minded folks should consume right now?
On the topic of defining your relationships and setting them up so that they serve your company and what it needs, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss is all you Chris Voss is a former FBI negotiator who is using his tactics in navigating conversations with terrorists, kidnappers, and other bad actors to helping you manage your relationships in business, not because you're dealing with bad people, but because difficult conversations are where value lies. And he will walk you through examples and principles of how to do that. There's a worksheet at the end of the book that you can use to prepare for any meeting, any discussion, no matter how hard it is. And even with the experiences that I have now, I've found it tremendously useful, even in the last 6 months.
I love that. And, difficult conversations is where the value lies. It's where growth happens. And that's such a key. That's hard for us. It's hard for us to have hard conversations. We need to learn how to do that, especially if you're going to run a business and be an entrepreneur. You need to lean into that and know that's where value lies. So I love that book recommendation.
Yeah, that deserves an asterisk for Frances Simowitz. She's the first one to say leadership, that I heard say, leadership is the ability to have difficult conversations. That's right. Wow.
I love that, and we're actually gonna have Frances on the show as well at some point. So we'll have to ask her about that. I'll asterisk that. When you think about entrepreneurship, what is a lasting message that you want listeners to take away thinking about entrepreneurship from this episode?
Thinking about entrepreneurship from
what is the lasting message that you want the listeners to take away as we think about entrepreneurship from this episode?
Say that last phrase again.
Yeah. So what is the lasting message that you want listeners to take away from this episode on entrepreneurship?
From this episode,
yeah.
The lasting message that I think Bear Nation should take away from this episode is that you are already entrepreneuring, whether you know it or like it or not. It is a part of our times. There is unrivaled ambiguity online of information, of direction, of everything. And if it feels hard, it's because it is. Engaging with this entrepreneurial moment is going to reward you. And the sooner that you choose to do that, I promise the happier and the clearer you'll be for it.
I love that. It's a great lasting message. John, there's so much. I've got 4 pages of notes that I've been furiously scribbling down throughout this and front and back. So thank you for sharing so many insights. I know that we have the Cela Summit coming up in October 28th. And, John wanted me to share this, that all listeners are invited to get onto the mailing list for the Global Accelerator Summit. The summit is closed to the public, right? But for those that are on the mailing list, they do have the opportunity to apply, correct?
Yeah. It's a closed invite, but applications are open. And even if you're unable to attend, there is going to be some really great content coming from Cela in the newsletter about accelerators, about entrepreneurship, about all this stuff. So sign up for that.
Awesome. And I will make sure that link is in the show notes. So you can click on that. You can sign up for that. If you get the opportunity to go, you could meet your life-changing mentor, an investor, community, a customer, or other relationships. And what's really cool is that it's at the NASDAQ, right? So, what a cool, amazing opportunity. I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely going to make sure to apply for the opportunity to be a part of that. Bear Nation, there'll be a link in the show notes. So make sure that you click on that. And then where else can my listeners find you? How can they connect with you and the company, John?
Yeah, we're most active on LinkedIn. So if you find us at Accelerator on LinkedIn, just look up Cela with the purple C. Follow, and we'll stay in touch.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to link that as well in the show notes so you can have an easy way to link up with Cela.
Thank you.
John, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Bear Nation, thanks for tuning in. And I can't thank you enough, John, for just the awesome conversation here. Appreciate you being a part of this.
Thanks for inviting me, Rob. It's an honor.
All right, Bear Nation. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon and stay well. Bear Nation, once again, thank you for listening to the Bare Necessities of Entrepreneurship. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. And until next time, take care.